Hiya. Oh, it's lovely to be back with you again. It must be what, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years since I've been coming into school, and I've really missed this last couple of years. Yeah, I've missed you guys. I've missed doing assemblies, and I've just missed sort of being around you all, really. If you don't know me, my name's John Sherbourne. I'm one of your governors. I do some reading with Year 6. I do some these sort of occasional collective worship sessions, and I just love being with you all. And it's been a real drag this last couple of years because I've just not been able to get in. But it was just before Christmas, I think, that Mr. Spink asked me if I'd like to restart doing these collective worship sessions, and we said we'd try and work something out. So what we've decided is that for 1 year group, and I think this time it's going to be Year 6, I'm going to be in the hall with them, and the rest of you will probably be watching sort of a recording of it, which obviously I'm doing now, and you'll probably be watching that on YouTube. And I'd like to think round about the same time, and then it'd be sort of all be together, wouldn't it? So all you've got to do now is sort of sit down, relax, put your thinking caps on, and just share with me. I'm going to call what I'm talking about today, I wonder what would happen if. And it's all really about something that happened probably around about 5 years ago, when during one of their half-term holidays, our 3 grandchildren came up to stay with us. They live in Leicestershire, which is about 100 miles away. And one morning I was helping Scott and Jack to try and build the tallest tower ever out of Lego bricks. And as it took shape, we were chatting away, and they were both telling me all sorts of stuff. They told me about a new teacher they'd got at their school and what their rather rude nickname was for her. They told me about what Scott told me about a new game that he was starting to play on his tablet. And Jack was just obsessed at the time with swimming, and he was telling me about how well he was doing with his swimming lessons. But as we were chatting away, and as we were sort of building this tower, one thing they kept asking me, one thing they kept saying time and time again was, I wonder what would happen if. And I thought, yeah, tell me more. They said, well, I wonder what would happen if maybe instead of building the tower up all that way, if we put some extra bricks in there and we sent it off that way a bit. Or maybe if instead of just doing a tower up like that, we could put maybe 2 or 3 bricks together, make a platform, and we could send one tower that way that was made all of red bricks, and one tower that way that was made of perhaps yellow bricks. And all this got me thinking about what they just said. And I thought, I wonder what the world would have been like if nobody had ever said, I wonder what would happen if. You see, wondering what would happen if is actually how things get changed. It's how things get invented. Even here in school, we're surrounded by all sorts of stuff that if somebody, nothing would have changed. If people hadn't have said, I wonder what would happen if, you'd probably still all be writing on blackboards, and your teachers would have chalk and all this sort of stuff. So I got my old googly thing out, and I started looking for some, what I would call, new inventions. Now, I've got them. I've printed them out actually, because I think they're better like this. So let's have a look. Can you see that one? That on the top there is an old steam train, and look at all the muck and smoke and rubbish it's billowing out of its chimney. Now, one day somebody must have said, I wonder what would happen if we could think of a different way of powering that train. And they worked and worked and worked, and they kept refining it and making new bits and twiddling with it. And in the end, they came up with that at the bottom, which is the Eurostar. Another thing, look at this one. this was, well, I don't know when that was, but that's called a biplane. I think it might be a tiger moth. And it's called a biplane because bi means two. And if you notice, it's got two sets of wings. It's got a little petrol engine at the front there. And one day somebody said, I wonder what would happen if we could find a new way of powering that plane. Or maybe I wonder what would happen if we took one of the wings off. And look what we ended up with. But these are by no means the fastest planes on Earth. The Red Arrows, the RAF, the Royal Air Force Aerobatic Team. Incredible. I wonder what would happen if. And look at the result. I've got another one. When I started work, long time ago, the reporters I worked with, because I worked on a newspaper, the reporters I worked with, they all used to write their stories and clatter their copy out on an old typewriter like that. This is actually called a Remington Portable. Can you imagine how portable that would have been? But somebody one day once said, I wonder what would happen if. And look what we've got now. We've got iPads. Absolutely amazing. All those things, they all came about just because somebody said, I wonder what would happen if. Let me just tell you before I finish on this bit about two random inventors. First, there's William Addis. He's on the top there. Now, about 300 years ago, people used to clean their teeth by rubbing soot into them with their fingers. Now, William Addis, who looks very grand there, he was actually in prison at the time. And one day, while he was in jail, he saw someone sweeping up. And he thought, I wonder what would happen if, rather than rubbing soot into your teeth with our fingers, if we could use some sort of brush. Today, that company that William Addis, he founded, it sells something over 70 million toothbrushes a year. And then there's the guy on the bottom. I love this guy. This guy called George Crumb. And George was a chef. And he was famous for making the most fantastic, what you might call chunky chips, I suppose. But one day, somebody sent them back. They sent them back into the kitchen and they said to George, they're too fat. So he thought, right, I wonder what would happen if. And he sliced the potatoes so thin that instead of serving up really fat, chunky chips, he served up something that was really, really thin. What had he invented? He'd invented crisps. Okay, so those are all things that were invented sort of years and years ago. But, you know, if all that time ago, those two guys hadn't have said, I wonder what would happen if, and if in much more recent times, exactly the same thing hadn't happened, we might not have half the things that we've got around us today and that we actually take for granted. Now, I know that there's no magic formula for coming up with great inventions. I know that's true because when you think about all those things that we've just looked at the superfast train, at the planes, at the Red Arrows flying, you realise that none of them were brand new inventions. None of them came out of nowhere, not even the toothbrush and the crisps. In other words, they came about purely and simply because someone somewhere took something that they already had, an old-fashioned steam train, a ropey old biplane, and a clumsy old typewriter, and they said to themselves, I wonder what would happen if. Now, I know this is something I've said before, but I believe that when we're growing up, we discover that we have all sorts of different gifts and talents. This is why some of us like certain lessons, I guess, certainly more than others. I remember when I was at school, I hated maths. I just didn't understand maths. But I loved English. And I loved it particularly when the teacher used to say to her, okay, here's a string of words, a string of different words. And we had to make them into a story. Oh, and I loved it because she might say elephant, tea bag, rocket, cauliflower, all sorts of weird and wacky words. And I loved it, just weaving all those words into a story. Anyway, I also believe that when we were born, we also, besides all these gifts and these talents, we were also given an amazing imagination. And it's our imagination that helps us to see things differently. It's our imagination which tells us that we're not going to go around keeping things exactly as they are, exactly the same, but we're going to come up with new ideas, with new inventions. We're going to ask, I wonder what would happen if, but then we're going to do something about it, and we're going to change things. As a Christian, I think our gifts and our talents and our imagination are all part of God's plan to see the world develop. You see, I think God planned it so that we're all different. And I think he planned it so that when I say to you, I wonder what would happen if, you come back with an answer that I might never, ever have thought of. And, I believe it's you guys that can do that. It's you guys who, not by only saying, I wonder what would happen if, but even more importantly, by following that through and coming up with something new, with new inventions and new ideas, that can and will make this world a better place. Let's finish with a really short prayer. Father God, we thank you that you made each and every one of us different, and that you gave us all special gifts. So now, never let us be afraid of using those gifts and those talents and our imagination. Never let us shy away from asking, I wonder what could happen if. Because that way, together and with your help, we can play our part in making this, your world, a better place. Amen. Again, thank you so much for inviting me back to school. It's been wonderful. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you soon. Bye for now.